Aureo Pinto. I am an enrolled agent, an accountant, and a registered financial consultant. I have an accounting and tax practice where we have accounting services that we offer, tax compliance, tax planning, investment planning, and retirement planning, and insurance planning as well. So all phases uh, of financial planning. And October is always kind of like scary month, right? So we're going to do scary stats and scary solutions to start off with. So the first scary stat is that 56% of Americans cannot afford $1,000 emergency expense from their savings account. And that's according to bankrate.com. So more than half of the population in the US does not have $1,000 liquid available in case there's an emergency. So that is a scary thought because you can wind up with your car breaking down, needing new tires. Like in our case, we had a stove like all of a sudden just die out on us, so you have to go out and get a new range. And things like that will definitely be very close, if not over $1,000. So what is the solution for that one? Always remember that you need to have an emergency fund and you need to pay yourself first. That emergency fund will be that rainy day fund that you have for emergencies that pop up that you have not planned, that you cannot plan. You can't plan for a lot of the things that happen. And we'll go through later in the presentation how to start an emergency fund. Scary stat number two has to do with student loans. 25% of student loan borrowers will default within the first 5 years of repayment. Uh, right now, statistically, and 25% will continue to be that number will continue to go up because college tuition is going up dramatically. It's going up almost exponentially in some schools. And financial aid has also been going down. It's not as it was in the past. A lot more things that were not considered income for calculation purposes before are now being calculated, or a different percentage of them are being calculated. So there's more that the student and the parents need to contribute in order to maintain the tuition payments. So the solution is to explore more grants, scholarships, part-time jobs. Many times, as part of your financial aid package, the school will offer you or will offer the student college work study where they work on campus, and what they get paid will cover part of the tuition or whatever other bills they have outstanding with the school, and it's part of their package. So that's something to always consider. All of the high schools or the high school districts, I should say, or the school districts have books that they prepare for seniors that have a listing of all the grants and scholarships that are available. It's a full inventory. And you just have to make sure that your kids apply to everything. Even if it doesn't look like they might be eligible for something, apply anyway. Some are for $100, 200, some go into the thousands as far as an award. And the ones for like 100 or 200, that's not bad. If it's an essay that needs to be submitted, make sure that they work on it because that one couple of $100 will cover at least one textbook. So every little bit helps when it comes to college expenses. Um, scary stat number three, 35% of the US household have credit card debt. That means that a third of everyone uses their credit cards. And many times they don't pay it off at the end of the month. So it'll accumulate interest, it'll continue building up. And after a certain period of time of using it and just making the minimum payment that the credit cards will put on their statements, you wind up with a higher debt than what you initially had charged to your accounts. So the solution is to buy things on credit card only if you can afford to pay it on time. So let's say for whatever reason you need to buy something, you don't have the cash with you, but you know you have the cash available, use the card and then when you get the bill, pay it off. Don't wait until the following month or a couple of months down the road because you can wind up with the interest accumulating. And if there was any sales or anything that you got on that particular purchase, you've just lost the sale because now you're paying more than what the item actually cost you. So scary stat number four, 32% of American adults have zero retirement savings. So a third of the population really do not have any money saved up for retirement. So they are only relying on Social Security. Social Security does not cover all of your living expenses. Inflation and the cost of living is much, much higher than Social Security. Social Security would not be enough to get you through retirement. And lately, with budgetary issues, there might be cuts to Social Security. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Um, I think the government will bail out Social Security, but it'll be done in a way that's going to kind of kick the can down the road. And at some point later on, it's going to be much worse. But I think over the next 10 years or so, there will be some type of a solution to the current Social Security issue. But a third of the population not having any type of retirement is scary. And the solution for that would be to start saving now. Continue doing it regularly. Once you start, kind of put it on autopilot so you continue putting money away for retirement. Remember the power of interest compounding, which means that the amount of money that you put away and you invest, and we'll go through the investments in a little bit, will gain, will continue to increase, not only based on the money that you're putting in on a continual basis, but also on its own organic growth based on the interest or dividends, depending on how you have it invested. Um, and you should be saving between 10 and 15% of your income. And that's kind of tough, but it takes some budgetary skills that we'll go through two slides down. Now, October is Cyber Awareness Month. So, which means that every October, federal government, state government, and companies kind of make they show and they publicize it on TV. There's always a campaign showing that there are scams going on. There are a lot of things that are taking place that people are falling into certain traps. And there's two that are right now are very prevalent in addition to all the ones that they keep on recycling. A lot of these scams have been around for a while. They'll kind of die out for a couple of years and then they'll recycle them again. Um, so according to the New York City government agencies, AI scams, right, are scammers that can impersonate your family and friends using AI technology to ask you for money or personal information. They do this by manipulating videos and recordings found on social media to produce realistic sounding voice recordings or even videos. These are called voice cloning or deepfakes. So a lot of people, they post a lot of things on social media. They go out on a trip and they put pictures or they put little video clips. Scammers go through social media. They pick up certain pictures. They change it. They do, a while back, it used to be Photoshop where you can alter a picture. Now with AI, you can do it much quicker and much more sophisticated. So it doesn't look like it was changed. It looks like an original picture. And they're also able to do it with video and with audio. So you can wind up getting a call with the phone number that's already also cloned, and you'll see the caller ID can be like a relative or a friend. And when you pick up, you think it's that person, and the voice will sound just like that person. So be very careful sometimes. Uh, and one of the ways to look out is look for inconsistencies in the videos or the audios. You'll be able to understand if you do hear a voice that you thought was from somebody that you knew, if there's a difference. So you'll know that that person is not the real person. Don't share personal information over the phone if you get a call or over emails. I sometimes get emails from different companies saying, we try to renew your Norton or your McAfee antivirus subscription, and the credit card was rejected. click on the following link and log into your account and update your credit card. So when I look at the email of who sent it, it'll be a particular name or a string of numbers or letters, and it'll say at Gmail or at AOL. So it's not the company that's sending it, but it looks like an official email. If you were to click on that link and quote unquote log in and then put in your credit card information, they just stole your credit card information. They can charge it. So be very careful of emails because they also do it through emails and look at the email addresses of what you're getting. On your own personal computer and on any apps that you use on your phone that can be hacked in any way, use strong passwords and secure the passwords. Make sure that you commit them to memory or you have a program where you can save the passwords, and then all you have to do is just have the one password to gain access to that software package or that app that has all the passwords listed. Don't give anybody your passwords. Don't share with anybody. Don't write it on a post-it and put it next to your computer. Um, those lead to a lot of problems. Uh, and always beware when somebody is asking for money, either on a email, on social media, or over the phone. A lot of times when you get a call, like you'll get a call from an organization that you think is a charitable organization that you might have given money in the past. And and they'll ask, we want to, would you like to contribute again? And they do it on hit and miss. It might be an organization that you did contribute and you're like, oh yes, yeah, I want to do it again. And you give them the credit card information. Could be a scam. Usually what I do when I get calls like that is like I tell them, no, I can't talk like right now. I'll call back. And then I'll call directly to the organization. And I'll tell them, I got a call, are you guys doing a marketing campaign? And they'll say yes or no. If it's no, then I definitely know that it was a scam. And then when I call in to the organization, then I do any donations with them that way. As long as you initiate the call and you have a true number of the organization, that's okay to do. But not if they call you asking for a donation. Um, that's also been happening to alumni associations. You'll get a call from a college. And again, this is like random. They'll say, oh, we're from such and such a college or university, and there's a campaign for the alumni, and if you just happen by chance that you are an alumni of that school, you wind up giving them the information, and it might not be to the actual school. It might be a scammer. And October has always been uh, the awareness month, so you'll see advertising campaigns. You see News 12, Westchester County. A lot of the major um, news channels will have certain scams that are taking place, and tips, and federal agencies and state agencies all have these educational campaigns to kind of bring it back to the forefront so people know that there are scams still taking place, and they're getting very sophisticated as the time goes by and technology improves and it increases and gets better. The scams also get better in a bad way. This is a letter that one particular school district sent out to its parents, and it's for a high school. And it's basically reminding the parents that they shouldn't share personal or financial information over the phone with unsolicited callers. And if you do get a call like that, hang up immediately. So this reminder was sent out because some children, some high school students and or parents or guardians uh, received calls asking for personal information, which included credit cards, so that they can mail the student and the parents the results of the SATs or the PSATs. A lot of students will say, "Oh yeah, I just took the test like last week. I want to get it as quickly as I can." And sometimes they tell you, you can probably get it online. They'll send you a link. These are scams. So one of the things to remember, and they added the additional tips here, um, is that always be wary of unsolicited callers. If you receive a random call from somebody asking for a payment research the organization before sharing any personal information. Double check with your child. Make sure, that, they didn't give that information out to anybody. They might even call the child who took the SAT and ask them for the information. So check with them. And understand the College Board's practices. The College Board will never ask for your bank account or credit card information over the phone or through an email. Um, and that last, number four is basically stands true for every situation. Don't give your financial information to strangers, and never agree to any form of payment for a purchase that you did not initiate. Like I said earlier, you might get a call asking for a contribution, and you might think it's from a charitable organization that's uh, a real organization, but they're the ones that are initiating it, not you. So I would just hang up and call the organization directly if you want to contribute and do it on your own. So now that we covered the scams and we covered the scary statistics, let's get some tools in your toolbox to help you get ready and rid of these scaries. So scary stat number one was, right, that 56% of the individuals did not have an emergency fund. And also number three, where household had credit card, 35% of the household had credit card debt. So how do you take care of that? The best way of starting it is through a budget. Go through your monthly income, monthly expenses, calculate everything that comes in as income. You have a side job, include that, side gig, include that, salaries, wages. If you work in the industry where you get tips, add an estimate of what your tips are and come up with an income amount that as accurate as you can come up with. And then go through your expenses, add them all up. On average, usually household expenses for mortgage, rent, utilities are usually 50% of your total income. Um, so you kind of calculate what all your expenses are. Put the money that you put to charity, put money that you put toward your goals, and we'll talk about goals in a little bit. And then you have to add yourself to the budget. A lot of people will come up with a budget. In this case, they'll have like $4,000 of income and they'll have $4,000 of expenses. They'll add, like, the expense line might be 2,400 and now they wind up with the 4,000, not paying themselves at all. If we go through the expenses, we'll find ways of saving money and reducing your expenses, and that should be what you're using to pay yourself first. So this will in fact become like a zero-based budget, which means that every dollar that comes in is going to be spent, but you're included in the mix. So you become a bill, if you will, of your monthly expenses. So just like you pay mortgage, Con Ed, and any other bill, you make sure that you pay yourself first. And that should be at least 10%. So 10% of your income will go to you, and that's what we'll put for an emergency fund. And I'll show you the trail of how that money will flow. And the best way to start the budget is to just for 1 week, just look at all your expenses. Keep an expense tracker, the date, what you spent it on, and the amount. And then kind of go through that for that 1 week. The end of the week, sit down, go through it, kind of summarize how much you spent on, and this will include all bills. So you'll know what your cell phone is and your um, cable, rent, mortgage. But there are other things that are daily out-of-pocket expenses, and those are the ones that usually you'll be able to summarize and say, this is probably an area that I can cut down on. And that would be, eating out fairly frequently. The Starbucks, the Dunkin' Donuts, the um, Paris Baguettes, all these places where you would just drop in, grab a coffee, grab a bagel, grab a snack, grab a quick sandwich, um, and that adds up. So once you go through the expense tracker and you summarize each of those categories, you'll find that there are certain categories that you can cut. And as you cut those expenses down as best you can, that money that gets freed goes to pay yourself first and then that becomes part of your emergency fund. So you're freeing money that you're spending and not keeping track of. Once you realize what you need to keep track of and which ones you can cut down, now you've just freed like $5 here, $10 there, and you kind of move that over to an account where that becomes your emergency fund. And that's your first bucket, if you will, of savings that we're going to establish. All right. So these are the accounts that you need. So the question that was asked before, Z, when you said like where to save your money or the emergency fund, and then when I went through the scaries, one of the solution was to have an emergency fund. And then when we go through the budget and we go through the expenses, the money that you free up from expenses that you can cut down, that are discretionary expenses that you don't really need and you can cut down, all of that money that you've now freed up should go into an emergency fund. And the emergency fund, you should have 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. So in the budgeting example that I had, you had expenses of about 4,000. So you should have anywhere between 12,000 and 24,000 saved up in an emergency fund. This is good for, like I said, car breaks down, major appliance breaks down, uh, you get sick, you lose your job, any of these life occurrences that can hinder your income or increase your expenses dramatically because of the emergency, you need to have this fund available to kind of tide you over for that time period. And that's where all the freed up money should go first. And those can be saved in a regular savings account, um, money market account. Money market is liquid, which means that you can take it out of the account, out of the bank fairly quick. You don't have to, it's not stocks or anything that you need to sell. And money markets will have a higher interest payout. So you'll get a little bit more than putting it into a regular bank account. Regular bank accounts right now are paying 1/4%, maybe 1/2%. Um, a money market, a high yielding money market can pay you 3, 4, even 5%, depending on where you are. If you do an online bank account with an emergency fund for a money market, you can probably get 4.5 to 5. And the second bucket is short-term savings. So once you have your emergency fund established, that money that you freed up, you continue now to put it away and you can put it into your short-term savings and the long-term savings, which is the last icon on the right. So short-term would be for trips, any major purchases that you want to make, not an emergency major purchase, but something that you want to, redo a part of your house, redo your kitchen, or whatever the case may be. You can save short term just for that one occurrence. And then the long-term savings would be more for retirement, um, and if you want to invest in real estate, since real estate is a good market investment at this point. And for retirement, those are the accounts that you will go into, depending on your age and the amount of risk that you would like to take, that you're willing to take. Those should be in bonds to a certain extent and in stocks. Stocks will build up much quicker into a higher degree than bonds. So there's like 5 easy ways to start investing. A lot of people are afraid of putting money away into the stock market or into an account. Um, if you have a bank that you have a relationship with and accounts, a lot of people will go back to that account, to that bank, and open up a regular savings account, not knowing that they're not going to be making much in the interest. And with minimum balance requirements, um, statement fees, and ATM fees, you will actually lose money. You'll lose more money of what you're depositing than what you're actually earning in interest. So that's one thing to always keep in mind. Compare what will you get from the bank to what you're spending for having that bank account with them. That's why a lot of online banks pay much better as far as the interest rates are concerned, and their fees are very minimal, if any, because everything is done online. If you have a Discover card or an American Express card, and there's I think one other card that has its own online bank. So if you have an American Express, Express has an online bank. So it's much easier for you to put money into American Express since you already have an account through your credit card. And and there's some type of a relationship there already. And you'll get 3 to 4%. Discover has the same thing. If you have a Discover card, they give you the option of opening up a Discover money market. And it's an online bank, and that one I believe now it's paying about 4.2%, if I'm not mistaken. So it makes sense to put it away. It's still accessible because it's a phone call away, or you can transfer money into your regular checking account at home that then you can use the money for the emergency payment, the emergency expenses that you had. But it's also like far enough where it's not something that you can go to an ATM and pull the money out. So that's one of the advantages, and that's one of the things that I recommend. Starting off slow, the first box, invest in a money market account. Money market accounts require a higher balance, but some of them will get you started with $500. Yeah, it's not like you have to put thousands of dollars in. And they do pay a higher interest rate, like I said, and build confidence. The returns may be small, but when you compare it to the bank, if you have $500 in a bank account, at the end of the month, you'll get the bank statement showing that you probably earned 2, 3 cents on it. If you do an online bank that's paying you 4%, that same $500, you might wind up getting 80 cents, a dollar 50, depending on when you invested it and when you put it into the account and whether they're paying 4 or 4.5, 5%. So returns may be small, but they're a good way of building confidence because you'll see that your account is basically building up and earning interest at a higher rate and at a higher pace than you would in a normal bank.
Hi, Oreo. It's Liz. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I wrote a question in the chat. I wanted to know the process of opening up a CD in the bank.
Okay.
I know you can put like X amount of dollars in it. But then like once you put money in, like how long does it take? Like I know there's like a period where like you can't like retrieve it.
Hmm.
So,
You're right.
can you just
Yeah,
explain that?
sure. Let me just finish these two squares because actually in the next slide. It talks about
Oh,
CDs.
okay. I'm ahead of the game.
No,
Thank you.
that's good. It's keeping me on my toes. So diversifying. So once you start with an account, a savings account, money market account, you can move into a mutual fund. So a mutual fund is a combination of different stocks, and it's managed by a portfolio manager. It's diversified. So they'll have, depending on the mutual fund that you select, if you select the technology fund, it'll have the top 10 technology companies, and then it will have the smaller and the medium-sized companies in there as well. And they diversify because they don't want to put all the eggs in one basket. They don't want to invest everything in Microsoft or in Apple. So they'll have some money in Microsoft, some in Apple, some in Nvidia, and they'll spread it out over the technology sectors. Where if one of the stocks goes down, uh, and it's in a particular area that the other players in that same fund are not impacted, the fund won't lose a lot of money because the other stocks usually go up. A lot of these stocks are complementary. One will go down and the other one will go up, even if they're in the same industry, depending on where they are in that supply chain. And then play it out. There are investment themed games online that are free, and you'll start off with a hypothetical amount of money and you buy and sell stocks. You look at how the market treats those stocks, why it goes up, why it goes down. That's a good way of safely playing the market so you can get comfortable. And then go professional. If you do set up a mutual fund with a broker, you should have an investment advisor who will go through your risk. We'll do a risk analysis of what your risk tolerance is, what your age is, what your goals are, when you plan to retire, what do you plan to do in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and at retirement and even after. Based on that interview and that conversation, they'll be able to put you into a mutual fund or a variety of mutual funds that are diversified enough that will get you to those particular milestones with minimal risk. And again, it's not fail safe. You know, there are always market risks, but if there is an investment advisor who tracks the market and the different trends, there's less of a chance of you losing a higher amount of money than if you were to do it on your own. Okay, here we are, Liz. The first thing on this one is the CDs. So a CD is essentially a savings account, but it's a time deposit. So you go into a bank, some banks have 6 months or 7 months. Then they have 12 months or 13 months. And then they have 24 months. And they'll go 4, 5, 6 years. And different banks have different time periods and a different minimum amount. So you will put in whatever minimum they want for the time period that you're willing to lock up your money, because it is locked up. So if you get a 6 month CD and their minimum, let's say, is $1,000. Oops, why did I lose that? You will get, you will put that $1,000 away and lock it up for the 6 months. So it's a safe way to earn interest, as we say here with the purpose of it. The risk level is low because it's basically a savings account, but sometimes they pay money. Well, they don't pay as much as the money market does. They pay between the regular federal interest rate and the money market. So you'll get 2%, maybe 3%. But the longer amount of time that you lock it up and the higher the amount that you put in, the more that they will pay you in interest. So some banks have that if you have a $10,000 minimum on a CD that's at least 24 months, they'll pay you 4.5%, 5%. And as far as liquidity, it's low liquidity because if you take it out before that time period, 6 months or 24 months, whatever amount of period, whatever the time period that you locked it into, you're subject to a penalty. And the penalty sometimes is much more than what you would have earned. So when you're considering a CD, make sure that you can live without that money for that period of time. Because having to pull it out, you'll lose much more money than what you actually put in. So it's very potential, the potential is that if you put in $500 and you take it out before the 6 months is up, you might wind up losing 25 to $50. And that is basically 5 to 10% of the money that you put in. And you probably weren't going to earn that much in a 6 month CD. So be mindful of that, of the time period that you're able to put it away.
Yeah, thank you. Because the bank has been hounding me to open a CD because they said like the interest rate is low. It's like 4% or something like that.
Mhm.
So yeah, they said I think the period is like 8 months. So um I just wasn't sure what the whole I guess the lower the interest rate, the more interest that can accumulate. Is that how it works? Or on whatever
Well,
on whatever money I put in the CD.
yeah, so I'm not sure what they meant by lower interest. They're probably stating what they probably mean is that if you were to put into a regular account, the interest would be less than what you would earn if you were to put in a CD, because that's usually the case. You earn more in a CD than you would in a regular savings account because you're locking it in. And what the bank does is, since they know that, let's say in your case, you're not going to need that money for the next 8 months, they take that money and they lend it out at 12%, 14%, 15%. So they're making a lot of interest on it. That's why they want you to lock it in. That's one of the reasons that CDs are popular with banks, because you're basically lending the money to the bank instead of saving it, because they're using your money, lend it out. They make 10, anywhere from 10 to 15% on it, and then they'll give you 4% or 5%, depending on what your CD is for. Um,
I was just looking at my bank website. It says 7 month CD is a 4.65% APY.
mhm. Yeah, that's the annual percentage rate. So that's what you would get if you were to have it for the full year. So you would probably get 4.5 or so, which is not bad for that's a 6 month you said?
7 months.
7 months.
Then
Yeah,
it says
that's
13 month is 4.35. I guess it's smaller when I guess you have it longer, the interest rate.
right, right. Because they're calculating that since the federal interest rate went down, as far as, for loans and mortgages, they're thinking that the treasury rate will continue to go down. And if it goes down, then they're going to pay less. So they're looking forward to that point where if the Federal Reserve lowers the rates again for like another half point or so over the next 6 months, they would have to pay less because now they're going to earn less on their side. But usually, the longer the amount of period, the longer the time that you have it in a CD locked up, the more they pay. But now we're going through a period where interest rates are starting to come back down after being high for so long. So that's probably why the longer ones are going down.
So it's better to have like the shorter month, like the 7 month versus like the 12 month.
I think in the current environment, it would be better to have a lower one. Yes. And if you can lock it up for the 6 months or 7 months and not worry about it, yes, that's what I would do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, usually when the interest rates are going up, a lot of people put money into the CDs because they know the longer ones will eventually get paid at a higher rate. Uh, and they use a strategy called laddering. So somebody would buy like a CD, let's say in November, and they'll do a 6 month CD. And then they'll buy in December, they'll buy one which is like an 8 month or a 9 month. And they'll continue buying like every subsequent month, and they'll put like 500 or 1,000 into all of these. And then when they start cashing out, you wind up getting a cash out of your, in 6 months, in 8 months, in 10 months, and then they continue rolling it over. And if the interest rates start going back down, where you're not going to be making the amount of interest rate that you used to, then they go into the stock market. So there's different strategies of moving your money around, but it all depends on how much you can actually put aside and for how long. But I think right now, like a 6 month or 7 month would not be a bad thing.
Is the interest rate better like when you put it in like you gain more interest when you have it in a CD versus like having it in like a standard like savings account?
Yeah, the CD will pay you more than a standard savings account, but the
Yeah.
CDs right now are comparable to a money market account. Money market will pay you much higher interest than a regular savings,
Oh, okay.
and they're not locked in. So that's the difference between the CD and the money market. Like right now, unless somebody really, really feels that they need to have money in a savings account, I don't suggest putting it into savings account. I suggest putting it into a money market where you get much more interest, or a CD if you can lock it up. If you don't want to touch your money for that period of time, a CD with a good rate will be good to go into.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really use my savings account as often. Like I have like some money in it, so
Mhm.
obviously it's accumulating interest, but um
Okay.
like I said, the bank's been hounding me to like open a CD because of the interest rate and
Hmm.
yeah, I just like wasn't sure like how it worked with, the time frame and everything. So
Right.
thank you for explaining that.
Sure, no problem. And the next investment type, which is usually used for retirement in longer time horizons where you don't need the money in the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, would be stocks. Um, Basically, it represents ownership in a company. So you can buy Apple stock, you can buy Microsoft stock, you can buy basically in any industry of a publicly held company, you can buy. The value fluctuates with the company's performance. So Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Netflix have consistently been increasing, because they improve their products, they have a better market share. Some companies depending on the industries, have been going down. Well, this last week, fast food chains, McDonald's has been going down because of what's been going on. And other fast food chains, I think, have also gone down. And the only ones that have improved or have gone up is because people have more of a confidence in this different company if they know that they don't use the same distributors that McDonald's is using. Um, so investors in stocks, they look at the full industry of the stock that they're buying, and they really engross themselves with what's going on so that they know whether it's still worth going uh, and investing with that company, or if it's time to move and go into another company that might be a competitor. So stock is always good because in the long run, stock always has a higher return. The higher return translates to a higher risk as well. So you're willing to take a risk that the company will at some point can potentially go down. And I'll use McDonald's, just as an example because they've been in the news this week, not trashing them, but just stating the facts. Um, their stock has consistently increased over the last 10, 15 years because of the market share and how they handle their business. Recently, it has gone down. So somebody who was investing in McDonald's was always saying, oh, they have a lot of properties, they have a lot of franchisees and their sales are going up and they're worldwide. So they're looking at the positive aspect, but they're taking the risk that something can happen. There can be a lawsuit. There can be a supply line problem like now with the uh, people getting sick from the food and things like that. So you take the risk that with the positive and the increases, you also have to be aware that there will be at some point something will happen and it'll go down. Um, and I think McDonald's will recover fairly quick because McDonald's, and this is as an aside, McDonald's is really not in the business of selling burgers. That's not their forte. McDonald's is a similar to like a multi-level marketing company. They have franchises. 90% of McDonald's business is all franchises. 10% are company-owned stores. So they basically are on the hook for 10% of their own stores that they own. The other 90% of the stores that are out across the world, they're all franchisees. So they charge their franchisees a franchise fee. They need to use the same suppliers that McDonald's has already contracted, and they get a piece of that action. Plus, McDonald owns about 80% of all of the real estate property that the franchisees have the McDonald's on. So McDonald's is making money on the franchisee fees plus on the rent that they're collecting from the franchise. So McDonald's is basically in the real estate business. They're one of the larger real estate holding companies in the world at this point. So their business will recover fairly easily because the franchisees, even though their sales will go down, McDonald's is not going to make much money on the franchise fee because of the sales might take a hit, but they're still getting the rents from the franchises. And the franchisees are not going to shut down. So they'll still pay the rent. So it'll recover. So all of those things you have to look at when you invest in stocks. Bonds are basically loans that you're making to federal government, state government, or to a company. So you buy a corporate bond or you buy a government bond, you 5,000, 10,000, whatever the amount is of the bond. And for a certain period of time, you'll get paid interest on that bond, and then they'll cash out the bond when the maturity reaches the date that's been designated for that particular bond. So you can buy, especially with the government, you can buy a 1 year bond, 5 year bond, 10 year bond. In the meantime, you get interest payments, and then you'll redeem it at the end of that maturity period. Risk level, it's medium. It's safer than stocks. Um, the only risk with it is any fluctuations in the interest if it goes up or down, because that'll be a difference from what you're actually earning. And then the last one here is the money market accounts. So those are savings accounts that are short term, low risk securities. The banks already know where they're going to invest, and they basically invest in high quality bonds. So they're getting a higher interest rate and they pay out a higher interest rate. So right now, money market accounts can pay 4 to 5%. Well, liquidity is high because you can cash it out at any time. It's not locked in, and you're not penalized as you are with a CD. And the risk is very low. So these are the four items that are usually used, the different investment vehicles that are used to build up your emergency fund, to build up your short-term goals fund, and to build up your retirement fund. And just very briefly, 'cause I think we're running out of time. Oh, we got a little bit more. Um, since January of 1930, so the last, and this goes through 2019. So basically, for the last 90 years up to 2019, this shows the market trend of the stock market based on the risk level that you're willing to take. So if you want to go for aggressive growth, which means that you're 100% invested in stocks and you're willing to take the risk that one day the market will be up 500 points, the next day it might be down 600 points. That particular aggressive growth fund over the last 90 years has basically reaped an annual average of about 9.8%. The next bucket is growth, which is a little bit more diversified. So it's high quality stocks plus bonds, and that has returned about 9.4%. Moderate growth is, I would say, kind of like a 50-50 split between bonds and stocks, and that has returned 8.7%. Conservative growth is when you basically just go 75% into bonds and only 25% into stock, more or less. And that has returned about 7.4%, which is not bad. 7.4% is a good number without taking too much of a risk. And then the income, the last category, has returned 6.4, and that's basically just going into bonds. Uh, Now again, this is over 90 years. So there were some years where the stock market was up 16, 18, 20, even 25%. And then there were years when it was down 8% or 10%. So it's just kind of smooths it out so that you can see an average. And as you can see, the safer the category, like income, conservative growth, or moderate growth, the lower it is as compared to growth and aggressive growth. So the more risk you take, the more the rewards. This one, why did I get it twice? There you go. Okay. And this one is just the 1 decade. This one went from 2010 to 2019. So I just carved out the last 10 years of the prior slide, and it shows more or less the same. Aggressive growth was always at the forefront, but here you can see the aggressive growth was about 13% for the S&P. And then you have the growth, moderate growth, conservative growth, and income. Uh, so the S&P was up 13.5. Long-term US bonds were 6.5. So that's what gives you the safety if you were to go into moderate growth or conservative growth. And then T-bills are 0.5%. That's basically the income piece. So this gives you a little bit more of a picture. And short-term interest rates during that time period were 3.74. Right now, interest rates are, well, they were as high as 6. I think now we're like a 5.7 or so. The inflation rate back then was 1.75. I think recently it's been close to 3, if not more. And the employment rate is more or less the same. It's kind of fluctuated recently, but it's more or less in the 6%. So all of those things factor into how the market works, and you have to take that into consideration. That's why I recommend talking to a financial advisor who will take all of these pieces of the puzzle as they're working on a financial plan for you for your savings and your retirement. Any questions? Last couple of slides were a lot. I just wanted to kind of highlight how the market works based on the amount of risk that you want to take and the representative returns based on that risk. Any questions, comments?
Is that the current unemployment rate now? 6.22%.
It's similar to what it is now. I think now it recently went, well, over the summer it went up, spiked, and I think now it's back down. So it's hovering high fives, kind of low six at this point. They also defined how they come up with the unemployment rate differently. So the number might be the same, but if you were to use the definition of what it was 10 years ago, the
Mhm.
unemployment rate would be higher because now they're also counting like part-time jobs I don't think are being counted in the unemployment rate. Like a part-time job or a job over a certain number of hours is not considered unemployment. Whereas before, anything that was part-time was not considered full employment. And that particular position went into the unemployment, into the calculation of the unemployment rate. So they kind of changed that. But it's still in the 5, 6% range.
Oh, I see it says 2019.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like
but it
5 years. This was
hasn't.
5 years ago.
Yeah, but it's still been fluctuating and it's still in that kind of neighborhood. So it's yeah, it hasn't been a big difference from back then. Okay. So this I'll go through this one quickly. This kind of summarizes the last two charts and it gives you more of a breakout. So when I was talking about aggressive growth, that's basically 100% stock. Regular growth was about 80% stock, 20% bonds. Moderate is about a 60-40 split. I usually go 50-50 with moderate because depending on the age and the amount of risk that you want to take, I usually categorize moderate as 50-50. If you don't want to take a lot of risk, then yes, we'll do the 60-40. Conservative growth is 40% stock and 40 bonds. And then the rest are cash equivalents. So the cash equivalents would be a money market or a CD, or even like a treasury bill, which are the short-term government bonds. And then on the income category, you're basically down to 20% stock and 60 bonds and 20 equivalent. If you have enough of an emergency fund and enough in your short-term goal, I usually go 20 stocks and 80 bonds. I don't do much in the cash equivalent because the money market is already sitting in an emergency fund. So I kind of carve that out and I just do a 20-80 split. Um, So these are the hypothetical examples, and these are in general, but again, it goes based on your age, when you want to retire. When you want to retire is the most important thing. And then you have to kind of calculate your way back to where you are today and see how you're going to get there and the amount of risk that you want to take. And then speaking of retirement, so there's different retirement vehicles. You can have a 401k through a company, 403b if you work for a nonprofit or a hospital. You have an IRA, which is basically your self-directed IRA. You're handling it yourself. You have a Roth IRA, which is an IRA that you establish with after-tax money. So out of your net pay, you have an extra $100, you can put it into a Roth IRA. That Roth IRA will grow tax deferred and tax free when you retire. And then there's an SEP IRA. If you're self-employed, you can have an IRA under an SEP plan and you can actually put more money into an SEP than you can into a regular IRA. So 401ks and 403bs are usually managed by the employer. And you put money into it, and most of the time, recently that trend has been changing. But for the most part, they'll match whatever you're putting. So I always tell everybody, all my clients, if you're putting in 2%, 3%, whatever it is that you're putting in, if the company matches it, put the maximum that you can to get the match because that's free money that you're getting from your employer. And the minute you put in, let's say you're 2% and they match 2%, you just made 100% on your investment. And that doesn't even count the investment that you put it into or the amount of time that it's going to be building up. So if those are options that you have at work, put as much as you can so that it can get matched to the maximum. Uh, Three important things are start early. The compounding effect of an account is amazing. It could double, it could triple over a certain period of time. There's something called the rule of 72. Basically, you take 72 and you divide it by the interest period or the interest rate that you're earning, and that will give you the number of years that your money will double. So let's say you are going to get 6% per year. 72 divided by 6 is 12. So in 12 years, your money will double. Or you can do it the other way around. You can take 72 and divide it by the number of years that you want your money to double in. And that'll give you the interest rate that you need to earn. And then if you're willing to take that risk, then we'll get you into an investment that can give you that amount. So 72, let's say you want to retire in 20 years. You take 72 divided by 20, it's about 3.6, 3.7. So you need to earn at least 3.6, 3.7 per year to make that amount of money that you need in that number of years. So compounding is amazing. It's the way it works because you're earning interest on your investment plus on whatever interest or gains you've already earned as well. It's not just on the principal. And diversification. The chart before this one that had the different allocation pieces, how much is going into stocks, how much is going into bonds. And then once you have that, then you can even diversify within the stock piece. Do you want to go into technology stocks? Do you want to go into consumer stocks? Do you want to go and invest in banking stocks? So you can diversify by industry, by category, and that's also important. And then that leads into the next one, which is risk tolerance versus investment goals. So how much risk are you willing to take to meet your goals? If you go for high risk, you'll get high returns and you can meet your goals much quicker. But there's also the caveat that as quickly as you gain it, there's going to also be a bad period of time where the market will go down. And when you're planning for retirement, you have to consider your spending during retirement. Recently, statistically, people are living much longer in retirement and they're outliving their retirement funds. So have to, just like you did a budgeting early on, when we went through the beginning of the presentation, you should do a budget for retirement after you're retired. Will expenses go down? Maybe if you downsize your house or different things, or if you move to a state that has a better state retirement tax impact on your retirement. But sometimes I have found a lot of my clients, their spending during retirement, it's the same as when they were working. Because now that they're retired, their income might be a little bit less, but they're spending just as much because now they're spending more on vacations or they go on longer cruises, or they're spending more on family and grandkids and things like that. So you also have to have a budget in place and calculate what your retirement will be like. And the resources, different resources that you can go through. Uh, your credit, you can get annual credit reports. There are resources on cutting expenses as far as getting online coupons and rebates and things like that. There's investment apps, like I said earlier. You can start playing like a game and figure out like, where should I be investing and kind of lose that fear of investing. Um, Bankrate.com has investment calculators and they have the latest rates for basically any investment. If you want to find out which bank or which institution has the best interest rate or the best CD or the best bond, Bankrate.com has all of that. That's mortgage rates as well. Tax-wise, withholding calculators, now that we're finishing 1 year in January, you start the next year if you got a promotion, or if you wind up having to owe taxes, so you get a large refund that you weren't expecting, go back to your withholdings and change that so your withholdings are more in line with it actually happening. And then there's a couple of sites with talks about psychology of money and how to deal with the stress of money. Having a lot of money is stressful. Not having enough money is stressful. There are ways to deal with it and kind of have a good working relationship with your money and with your investments. And that's my contact information, and that's it. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, um, shoot them out. We're good. Any investments on, any investments, any questions on the scary stats or the scams? Just remember, if anybody calls or you get an email that looks suspicious, it's probably a scam. Just look at it, read it a second time, or listen to it again and pay close attention so that you don't fall for a scam. Um, we did the budgeting pieces. Any questions on that or the investments?